Going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Got a lot to talk about here on the show. Always appreciate you guys hanging out with me live on our FTN Network YouTube page. If you are, smash that like button. If you're over on Game Plus Network, you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out at Chris Meaney. Check out this video on our FTN Network YouTube page. Subscribe for free. If you're here, why not do that? But if you do have any questions at all, start and sit. We'll take some of that here on this show. Of course, it is only Wednesday, but our rankings are live over at FTNFantasy.com. And when I say our, I mean myself, of course, Jeff Ratcliffe, of course, Adam Pfeiffer, but we also have Jeremy in the house today. His rankings are live over at FTNFantasy.com. He's doing some fantastic work for us. So we're going to pick his brain today. We're going to talk some buy low candidates, some sell high candidates. We'll take a look at the most dropped players in Yahoo over the last 24 hours, the most added players in Yahoo, as well as the most traded players over at CBS Sports. So we'll dive into all that. It's just 2 weeks in, but a lot of people are panicking. And I get it. You know, you're 0-2. You're dropping guys left, right, and center. You want to just try to find, a couple players that can get into your lineup and score some fantasy points for you. Two of the most dropped players over the last 24 hours are Bears. Cole Kmet is not surprising to see the most drop, but Darnell Mooney's a little bit surprising, but I totally understand it. The guy has done nothing through 2 games. I think he's got 2 grabs, 4 yards. He had 1 catch for -4 yards. They're not throwing the football. Are they going to throw the football more this week in a matchup against the Texans? Probably not. I mean, you can throw in the Houston Texans. That doesn't mean that Justin Fields will be able to cook. I don't know. I just had that conversation with Jake Seeley. Also can be found on Game Plus Network, All in Football. Comes your way Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 8 Eastern on Game Plus Network tonight. Also available on our FTN Network YouTube page. He was just talking about too many people saying cook. Let this guy cook. Let that guy cook. What does it even mean? But that's a side joke. Betty in the house. What's going on, everybody? A couple things I do want to say off the top before we break and we bring in Jeremy. Something happening live on our FTN Network YouTube page today at 4 Eastern. A live fantasy hockey draft with myself and Eric Young over at Underdog Fantasy. A lot of fantasy hockey content coming your way over the next few days. We're going to have a draft kit. Nice little catch. We're going to have a draft kit coming your way this week. Everything that you need for your fantasy hockey drafts. Rankings, sleepers, busts, old faces and new places. Just taking a look at some guys that have changed jerseys. There's a couple really high-end players that changed teams this season. Jonathan Huberdeau, Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk. A lot of good players switched jerseys this year. What does it all mean? How does it change for their value? We will be talking about busts, breakouts, undervalued players, and a whole lot more. Of course, rankings there over at FTNFantasy.com. Look for them this week. And we will have a couple episodes on this show where we dive into division previews, future bets in the NHL, not just Stanley Cup bets. Last year, we nailed 8 of 9 goal scoring futures for those north of the border. Cool Bet. Shout out to them. I believe it's Cool Bets. My apologies there. But they do have, and I haven't seen this in other books, they have, future goal scorers. Certain guys, like last year, I believe we had, we had Sharon Govich. Yeah, Igor Sharangovich. We had a couple players. It doesn't really matter. But they have some goal props, some futures over at their website. And last year I noticed that they were really low on a couple players. I think they had like Taylor Hall at 10, things like that. So we'll try to find some edges. We'll share a couple here on the show as well, but we will have a lot of fantasy hockey talk moving forward. But that's really it for today. It is going to be a lot of football. I have a couple MLB props towards the end of this show, but Jeremy is hanging by. A couple news items I saw over the past 24 hours, not really heavy. Marlon Mack signed with San Fran. I don't think we need to get too crazy. I do believe Mason is the number 2 in the offense moving forward, at least for now. But Jeff Wilson, if you have him and you picked him up after week 1, you got to be happy with the usage that he had in week 2. And I think it does benefit him, with no Trey Lance. You got Jimmy G under center, maybe a few more rushing attempts and potential goal line work. We know that Jimmy's not going to tuck and run inside the 5 or inside the 10, not too often anyways. But that was a news item that I saw last night. I don't think anybody needs to get too crazy. Jay's in the house. Let's do that hockey thing. Carolina Hurricanes. We will have a Hurricanes preview. I really like Brett Burns as an undervalued defenseman, potential bounce back candidate. I think he can get back up to being a top 10 fantasy hockey defenseman this season with the Canes. And then the other piece I saw is that the suspension was upheld for Mike Evans. So he is going to miss this week's game. We could talk about Tom Brady with Jeremy. What do you do with Brady? Are you starting this guy? Would you actually roll the dice and start Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa in a matchup against Buffalo? I think I would go with Tua actually in a matchup against Buffalo over Tom Brady. We'll see. Is Julio play this week? Russell Gage this week? They're missing a lot of players in that offense, and Tom Brady hasn't done a whole lot. Both games have been under 220 yards passing, I do believe. I shouted to Mike Randall on the NFL betting show on Friday, coming your way this Friday at 5 Eastern on our FTN Network YouTube page. Man, he smashed this bet. Under 277 yards for Tom Brady in that matchup against the Saints last week. It wasn't even close. He did not have to sweat that one out at all. So Brady did lead everybody last year in passing attempts and passing yards and passing touchdowns. But of course, he is certainly shorthanded with no Godwin and no Mike Evans this week. Leonard Fournette says the touchdowns will come. They just got to move the football. They got to move the football a little bit easier or better. And it's been tough. And I don't know, this week against Green Bay, I don't expect a lot of offense between the Packers or the Bucs this week as well. We'll see what Jeremy has to say. We're going to break and we're going to bring in Jeremy. As I mentioned, I got some buy low candidates, some sell high candidates, just players I think are available, but do you even want them? We'll get Jeremy's thoughts on who he's looking to buy, looking to sell. We will visit the most traded players as well as the most added and most dropped players. If you guys have any questions at all at any point during the show, leave them there and we will get to them. Now is the time. Jeremy does a lot of start and sit stuff as well over at ftnfantasy.com. So we'll break and we'll bring him in. Hang tight. We'll be back in a couple.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN data.
Welcome back in. Mean Streets live on Game Plus Network here in our FTN Network YouTube page. As we bring in Jeremy PopesFFH on the Twitter machine, can catch a lot of his work over at ftnfantasy.com. Welcome in, dude. You're looking ready to go. I love the background here. A little Dobbins, Williams, Ridley, Swift, football helmets. Do you like the Buffalo Bills, sir?
I do. I am definitely a Bills fan. I am in Buffalo, so that's part of the mantra on the walls. Nice. You can't see. I got a nice big flag. So
very nice. I've been to a couple Buffalo games. An amazing experience. Both games, of course, as you could guess, the weather was just atrocious. Like sideways wind. I couldn't really enjoy the tailgate as much as I would like to.
The stadium's not the. They built it in the wrong direction, so it's really a wind tunnel. So I know you hear it on the broadcast and stuff. They sometimes bring it up, but it really does. It comes in the one side and it swirls in the stadium. It makes it bad. I used to have seasons, and there were some games.
Not anymore.
No. I just.
Well, now is the time to have seasons, dude. As the Bills are like
I had him when
at the top of the game.
The Rex Ryan era, like we got into it a little bit. We were like, yeah, let's do this, and then we were like, let's not. And then Josh Allen became Josh Allen, and now I'm like, dang it, I should have kept him. But it's nice to sit at home and just watch the game. Get to watch Red Zone as well.
Right.
Stay up on it. So.
That's actually it's a fun debate to hear people talk about actually going to a live game or sitting at home and watching all the games, or like Red Zone. I've been to tailgates before where people don't even bother to go in and watch the game. They want to hang out in the parking lot, feel that vibe. They have a couple screens set up. Red Zone, they watch the game there as well, and you're not missing any action. But a live NFL game is really nice. Eric Young, who is a big football fan, we do Set Bet Spike on Game Plus Network and here in our FTN Network YouTube page. He says, no, I would rather sit on my couch and watch all the games than go to an actual NFL live game. You were mentioned Josh Allen in the wind direction. I feel like the Bills are wishing that they had a roof on that stadium for the way that Josh Allen, his cannon of an arm and some of the win games that we've seen over the past couple of years. I think you would agree, right? A roof would probably be beneficial for the way that your offense runs.
100%. And they are building a new stadium. And so that is in the process, but they decided to scratch the roof. So there is no roof going on. So they are going to keep it open air. But I agree. I'd love to see that offense in a dome setting, 8 games of the year, 9 depending on how the schedule plans out there. But I just think that it would benefit more to the offense itself. However, I feel like the NFL likes to push that narrative that the Bills play in the snow and they have this going on, as demonstrated by the majority of their home games being in the back half of the season. So
it is beneficial to have such a good defense, right? That the Bills do have when teams come in and play in those type of weather games. I really wasn't going to talk Bills with you, but since we have you and we're see the Bills setup, why not? 5.5-point favorites here against Miami. Josh Allen has just he's had his way with the Dolphins. There's no question. Tua's coming off the big performance. It should be, a really nice test for Tua and this offense against the Bills defense. How do you expect this game to play out? Do you feel like Josh Allen and the Bills continue to roll, or is this going to be, a tight ball game?
I think the Bills I think they cover that 5.5 spread. I don't think you're going to see what we've seen the last 2 weeks. I do think that it's going to be a little bit closer just because I do worry. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are a tough tandem of wide receivers to cover. But I'm still not sold on Tua, to caveat into kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the Baltimore defense isn't ultimately as good as what we have known them to be the last year or so. So not that I'm discrediting what Tua did this last week, because that was impressive, as well as Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I think the Bills' test is a really good test, and I think the Bills are significantly better than the Baltimore's defense. So I'm just kind of I don't expect them to do what they did to Baltimore, and I think the Bills get up early. Just like you had said, Josh Allen's kind of just ruled the Dolphins since he's come into the NFL. So for me, I think that this game is a little bit closer. I don't think you're going to get the blowout like we had with the Rams in Tennessee, but I do think the Bills handle it pretty well.
It's pretty crazy to look. I know it's just 2 weeks in at the quarterback position and see the quarterbacks who are leading the NFL in passing yards and quarterbacks that are inside the top 10 in fantasy. You got Tua, you got Wentz, you got Flacco, a lot of these guys inside the top 5 so far. It's very, very early. And of course, a lot of that production from Tua came towards the end of that game, a phenomenal comeback. And it was it was just fantastic to actually watch those two in Waddle and Tyreek Hill just absolutely ball out. I'm with you. I'm kind of on the fence about Tua. I think I like him more than most. I'm willing to give him a benefit of the doubt over the past couple of years. Staying on the football field is key and health-wise, but he's won some big ball games over the short course of his career, and this one will be a true test for him this week. But I want to talk about other things here. I got a list here of the most added players in Yahoo. Up at the top, of course, is Garrett Wilson. No surprise. On this show, Jeremy, we talked a lot about before the season started. I just felt like the gap between Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson was just too large in drafts. I didn't think that Elijah was going as a borderline top 25, top 30 wide receiver, and Garrett Wilson was outside the top 40, 45. And now he's sitting here through 2 weeks. He's had a bunch of targets. He's still playing behind, Elijah, still playing behind Corey Davis. I do like him over Corey Davis, but he's been the most added player here after that big week and 2 touchdowns against the Browns. You got a couple quarterbacks here on this list. Jimmy G got to replace Trey Lance. Carson Wentz is on this list. Talked about Tom Brady, just lacking a few weapons in another tough spot this week against the Packers. I don't know how cute you want to get starting some of these guys over Tom Brady. Tua is also on this list. Darrell Williams on this list. Of course, we can get into that debate whether you like him more than Eno. Eno is just outside the top 10 here. We're waiting on James Conner. It sounds like he might be good to go. Logan Thomas has had a couple nice games here. Jahan Dotson as well. Jared Goff. So a lot of just trendy quarterbacks, I guess. I don't know if you feel comfortable starting any of these guys in single quarterback leagues. I don't think that I do. But let's talk about Wilson off the top. Do you view him as a sell high candidate? Obviously you like what you've seen from him for a couple weeks, but a lot of people are now all of a sudden concerned about Elijah Moore. How do you see this playing out? Because we know that Zach Wilson's going to be back soon.
Yeah, for me, so here's the way that I looked at it. All throughout the offseason, I was in on Garrett Wilson, okay? I do a lot of rookie stuff. I loved Garrett Wilson as a prospect. I thought that he was the best wide receiver in the class. I still think that, and I still think that the situation wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. Elijah Moore was a good prospect. He's not bad. I'm not saying that by any means. But Garrett Wilson brings a lot of different things to the table. He's just such a violent route runner. He's violent after the catch. He's a very exaggerated movement type player, but it creates problems for the defenders who don't know what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? He creates that abilities, and he just has a knack for being a very good wide receiver, just plain and simple. He gets open. It doesn't have to be pretty. He gets open, and he catches the ball a majority of the time that he's open. So the issue, and I think where that gap came from, is the reports from camp. And not only that, but I do think Zach Wilson really likes Elijah Moore. For me, I think that's where that's at. I think Joe Flacco saw a little bit more time with Garrett Wilson in the preseason, and I think that's why you're seeing this large target share to Garrett Wilson, because both of them are open. You see some of that, you watch some of the tape, and Elijah Moore's open when Garrett Wilson's open as well. It's just, it seems like Flacco's favoriting Garrett Wilson at the moment, which is not for any poor reason. Like I said, I really liked Garrett Wilson. I think he's the better wide receiver. I think ultimately he will become like the wide receiver there, and I think Elijah Moore's a great compliment to him. I don't think that that's an issue. I just am going to be worried once Zach Wilson does come back, what exactly happens here? What does this passing offense look like? I don't think they're throwing 59 times with Zach Wilson. I know it's crazy to sound like that. Like, you would think they'd throw more with their starting quarterback than their backup, but I think Zach Wilson's game, and once he comes back, I think they shelter him a little bit more than they do Flacco. I think there's going to be a little bit of an uptick with Carter and Hall seeing a couple more runs heavy to the game, as well as increasing. Elijah Moore, I think, sees more targets. So I do like Garrett Wilson as a good add. I'm not looking to sell him, and I think I feel comfortable starting him as a flex player at this point, just because of what Flacco's doing. But once Wilson comes back, I feel like you might want to temper that and maybe not be so easy to put him in your lineup until we see where Zach Wilson likes to throw the ball, which I think is going to end up going back to that Elijah Moore, and I think we see it kind of settle back out a little.
I kind of agree with you. Yeah, I think, would you start Garrett this week over Elijah, though, knowing that we've just seen over the past couple weeks and all those targets against the Bengals? Would you play? I mean, you probably don't have both, right? But where would you project these guys this week? Garrett Wilson ahead of Elijah, or are you still Elijah over Wilson?
I'm Garrett over Elijah at this point. I think it's pretty clear at this moment that, like I said, you even see it when Cooper Rush came in last week with Dallas. He targeted Noah Brown a lot and early on. I mean, CD got his own. He ended up having more targets, but the quarterback tends to lean towards what they're used to. And we saw it even early on, like the whole thing with Allen Robinson. Stafford was getting in trouble early and quick, and he was going to Cooper Kupp, Higbee, the guys that have been there. So for me, I feel like Garrett Wilson saw a lot of reps, and I just think that Flacco feels comfortable with them, and that's why he's throwing it to him over Elijah Moore personally. So. And
Elijah's would be a buy low for you. We'll get into buy lows a little later on. We'll break it a bit. We'll do some buy lows. But Elijah, I assume from listening to you that Elijah, I mean, he can be had. Everybody's talking about Garrett Wilson, right? If you go look at Yahoo, you see actually a downtick in ownership on Elijah. Believe it or not. There's people out there who play 10 teams. It's difficult decisions need to be made. So Elijah, I mean, the door is open for him if you want it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I'm not actively trying to get him, just because I could also see the aspect where Garrett Wilson is just better, and Zach Wilson tends to just go to him,
Yeah.
And it could go that way. I just know that in camp and everything, it was Garrett Wilson and all these highlights to Elijah Moore. So I know Wilson likes Moore, so I can see where it will flip, but I can also easily see where it stays the same.
Before we move on from the Jets, Medi's in the house as he gave up his Jets season tickets a few years ago for obvious reasons. Now he's just living that red zone life. I will actually be at a Jets game this weekend watching Garrett Wilson. I have a couple shares of him. I'll roll him out in my flex, but I have a lot of Breece Hall. The leagues that I have him in, I feel like nobody wanted him. He fell to like the 5th and 6th towards, closer towards the season. I think the change in guard is happening soon. I did see a lot of Ty Johnson on the field in third down situations, 2-minute drill last week, which really bothered me. We did get a Breece Hall receiving touchdown. He looks good when he's on the field. I don't think Michael Carter is going to ever go away. He's getting that first and second down opportunities. He is getting, third down opportunities. At least I saw that in that Cleveland game. He still had, 5 targets, a few grabs, and Breece Hall after what was a crazy week 1 usage out of the backfield, certainly through the air. It wasn't the case in week 2. How would you rank these guys this week? How would you rank them moving forward? Michael Carter, Breece Hall.
I'm very surprised that Michael Carter is garnishing this much work early on. I'm not. I thought that Breece Hall would come in, and I thought Breece Hall was the superior running back. He can play all 3 downs. He's a bigger-bodied runner. But the Jets obviously like Michael Carter, and for good reason. I mean, he's showing it on the field why Michael Carter should still be involved in this offense. So for me at this moment, I think you just have to kind of, like you said, almost temper those expectations. I think they could arguably both be top 24 running backs by the end of the season just because of their usage. They're both getting involved in the passing game. And that's another thing that is like, okay, when Wilson comes back, where are we going to be at? Like, is he going to check it down, or is he going to be a little bit more reckless opposed to Flacco? Is he going to run? So you're going to see, I think you'll see a lot of change amongst this Jets offense once Wilson's back. But at right now, I mean, a lot of these guys, they're flex startable. I think both of them are on a weekly basis, depending on the matchup. Cleveland just gave up, or Cincinnati, I think, is going to be viable for both of them to start this week. I'm not like rolling them out there expecting a ton from them, but I mean, if you have, depending on your lineups, those flex plays, I think 10 points is easily reachable for both of these guys, and they have that upside. Like you said, you saw week 1. I mean, Carter and Breece Hall saw a decent work in the target share. So if you're playing PPR, I mean, they could easily be 12, 15 points.
I think like 19 targets between them in week 1, or at least Flacco threw the ball 19 times to his running backs. He has a league high 103 passing attempts through 2 weeks, which is just crazy. Like, yeah, it's absolutely bonkers, especially when you look at everybody else and all the quarterbacks. So we'll move on from the Jets. I think that Hall eventually over time, I'm willing to buy on Hall. I wouldn't give up too much. I think, he does have upside to be an RB2. And what I saw in week 1 is like, wow, this guy could be a bell cow back in the league. Like we all expect. I mean, getting the catches right away. But you're right. Carter does look good. Last year, he was, around the top 12 and, elusive rating and forced miss and tackles from rushing and receiving combined. So, I mean, he's a pretty good running back. But I think Hall eventually. You mentioned Lamb. Let's do this and then we'll break and we'll look at the most dropped. Unless there's anybody else on this list, Tyler, if you want to show it one more time, we do have some people here. Jordan Heckler in the house. Hey, I picked up Tua. Who's better for fantasies this season? Personally, I would go with Tua over Jimmy G, just because I know Jimmy G does have obviously some really good weapons, a nice play caller. I mean, McDaniel and Shanahan are kind of doing similar things, and I think we can expect that. McDaniel's been linked to Shanahan his whole career, but I think there's more upside in Tua. I don't know.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree. I think Tua is the upside play. I mean, if you wanted a safe backup, if you're playing 1 QB or like a third quarterback, I mean, Jimmy G's going to be fine, but like he's not going to give you that massive blow up week like Tua had last week.
Exactly.
You're not going to get that.
And you're not going to get that. And they're both in tough spots this week. We mentioned Tua against Miami, and Jimmy has to go into Denver and play the Broncos. And this final question's easy for me. Heckler, Christian Kirk. I mean, it's just volume and opportunity for me. Christian Kirk, he's the clear number 1 in this Jacksonville offense. They play to a fast pace. They play aggressively. I mean, they have to, right? They still have a lot of holes defensively. I don't hate their squad overall. I think it's better than what most people, think when it comes to this Jags team. But I've really liked what I've seen from Christian Kirk through 2 games, Jeremy. I mean, volume, opportunity, high ADOT. mean, it's all there. Air yards, it's all there.
And I think Christian Kirk's lack of draft capital, like the ADP that was going on all off season, was just more of a bitter taste from the past. Like Christian Kirk's burned so many people in the past. From last year, he was better, but years before, we expected him to come in and we expected a lot out of Christian Kirk, and he never really delivered. Last year, he did to an extent, and then this year, he's just seeing the target volume. Like you said, he's the clear number one. They paid him, and they're using him like they paid him. They brought him in there to be that, and that's what they're using him for. And he's a good football player. There's nothing against him. He's never not been that. It's just always been that issue of like usage and continuity amongst his target share and whatnot in Arizona. And here he's getting that in Jacksonville, and I honestly wrote something up, takeaway from this week. I feel like Christian Kirk is a guy that you can start every week and not even have to worry about it. You just plug him in, even as a flex player. I mean, maybe not your high-end wide receivers, but like he's going to get you 15 points almost every week just because of the target volume, and he's so explosive that you could rip one off and you, boom. 20 weeks.
Absolutely. He's got 3 catches of at least 25 plus yards. I had him ranked aggressively last week as wide receiver 20-ish. I think I'm going to have him as a low-end wide receiver 2 the rest of the year. It's a bit of a tougher spot this week, and then maybe he has to deal with Darius Slay next week, but the volume's going to be there. Using our pace tools, the Jags last year, I mean, I know it's a different offense, and it's a better offense, of course, with Doug Peterson calling the plays and not Urban Meyer, but they ran at a fast pace last year. The quickest, I think it was like 25 seconds per snap. Pass rate was inside the top 5, and just through 2 weeks, it's very, very similar. And it's okay, Jordan. He says, oops, he picked up Garrett Wilson. I still think you have a really good wide receiver in Garrett Wilson, but I would do what you can to get Christian Kirk on your squad. We'll get to that question, Jay, in a little bit. We have to break. I wanted to ask about Lamb. I want to ask what you're doing with CeeDee Lamb. You mentioned Brown in there as well. I want to get your trust and how you feel about CeeDee Lamb moving forward without Dak. And then we'll take a look at the most drop players as well. Lots of fantasy football talk here, guys, with Jeremy. Hang tight. We'll be back in a couple. Watching Mean Streets live on Game Plus Network. Chris, Meaney, and Jeremy here with you. We are going through the most added and drop players. We're taking some fantasy football questions. We'll get to the J-Rob question a little bit here, Jay. One more, I guess. Wilson, he seems to be a hot topic, Jeremy, right? He's the most picked up. He's coming off a big week. This is a question from Elite Diz here. Should I start Garrett Wilson or Michael Thomas? Michael Thomas has looked pretty good through the first 2 weeks. He's got himself 3 touchdowns, 11 grabs on 17 targets. He's got a matchup against Carolina in Carolina. And then we have Garrett Wilson at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Which way are you leaning here?
All right. So I do have Michael Thomas ranked higher than him this week. just because I feel like he's safer. As sad as that sounds, I do think that he is pretty much guaranteed most likely a touchdown against Carolina. I feel like he's looked pretty good. That New Orleans offense has been okay. I mean, yeah, they struggled a little bit against Tampa Bay, but who doesn't? So Carolina's not the same monster, so I'm leaning towards, I'm guessing he's going to find the end zone, Michael Thomas, and he's probably going to have that standard 5 catches for 50 yards, probably going to have 15, 20 points. But if you want to shoot for the upside, I don't hate it. I mean, Cincinnati struggled against Cooper Rush on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I know that their defense was pretty good last year. This year, it's been very hit or miss, and I feel like they let Noah Brown beat them. CeeDee Lamb had a pretty decent day, didn't find the end zone, but I mean, Tony Pollard had a big run against them. Like, Cincinnati's defense looks a little shaky right now. There's definitely a Super Bowl runner-up hangover, if that's a thing out there, but
it might be.
Like, I don't hate it. I mean, Garrett Wilson's seen a lot of target volume, very similar to Garrett. I mean, he's seen wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 target volume at the moment. So, like, if you want to shoot for it and you want to play that hot hand, I don't hate it. I do have Garrett Wilson ranked in like the 30s range for wide receivers. So it's like wide receiver 3. So like he's startable.
He is.
I don't hate it.
I would go with Thomas. I don't hate it either. I think what you said is, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I would go with Thomas here. I do believe actually Thomas has a bit of a higher ceiling. I've liked what I've seen from him from the first couple weeks. He's getting some end zone targets. He's finding a way to score some touchdowns. Jameis, I do have some concerns about Jameis moving forward with the back and things like that, but I think Michael Thomas is the way to go there. And Jordan says he now has Rodgers and Tua. So I don't like to have 2 quarterbacks, but if Rodgers gets into a bit of a groove, I would look to maybe sell high on him and you just roll with Tua. I think that Rodgers does have a higher ceiling, even though he has the lack of weapons. I just don't love rolling 2 quarterbacks in a single quarterback league. I know that those guys are not top 5. I think when you have a top 5, it's easier to just kind of cut bait with anybody else and just roll that top 5 out every week, but it can be pretty tough at times.
I feel like it's tough on
make the decision
styles too. I've had people reach out to me on Twitter and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, should I cut this guy or not?" Like, but my league really garners quarterbacks. Some 1 quarterback leagues, depending on who you're playing with, like people roster 3 quarterbacks because they just do
hoard them all.
So like then you have no free agents. So in that aspect, like I guess you're gonna hold on to both of them because if something happens to one, like your free agent choice might be like a backup. There might not even be a starter and a free agent. So I guess it really depends on that, but.
I'm in a league where I'm hurting already. With Trey Lance, I had Trey Lance as my quarterback, and I don't really want to roll with Jimmy. And there's other guys out there like Fields. I'm not super excited, but we'll get to Fields in a second. This Bears offense, actually. One more thing, I mentioned Lamb and Noah Brown. I mean, Noah Brown, like to your point, right? I mean, backup quarterback, running with backup offense, second team offense, so built in a rapport. It seemed like there was a connection between Noah Brown and Cooper Rush. Are you really even starting Brown this week? Is this just a stash? And what are you doing with CeeDee Lamb? Like, what do you do with CeeDee Lamb moving forward? Do you buy low on this guy, or do you roll him out just because it's CeeDee Lamb and he has upside, a matchup against the Giants? I could see myself benching him over a lot of players this week.
Yeah, for CeeDee Lamb, I feel like he's a guy that where I drafted him, I'm not going to get that return at the moment. So I can feel bitter, but I feel like he's still a guy that you roll out there depending on your starting lineup format. If you start 2 wide receivers in a singular flex, I'm sure you have somebody on your roster that I'd rather start.
Kirk.
But if you have 2 or 3 flex players, I'm probably starting Lamb. Just because he still saw 11 targets, which led the Cowboys. He just only caught 5. So now the question comes, or he caught 7, sorry. But it was like, where is the aspect to that? Is it going to be that he sees all these targets and they're just poor targets and it's not going to vault into anything? But I mean, he did have 75 yards, so it's not like he was completely useless. It was 15 fantasy points. He ended up as somewhere in the wide receiver 2 range. So I still feel like Lamb's a viable starter. As far as Noah Brown goes, I'm very less interested. I think he's a good add if you're really desperate, but I'm not going to say go pick up Noah Brown for CeeDee Lamb. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Gotcha. You'd play Lamb over DK Metcalf.
100%.
This week. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into the most drop. There's a lot of Bears on here. This is from Yahoo over the last 24 hours. Cole Kmet back-to-back donuts for you. Taysom Hill was actually one of the most added last week. Now, of course, one of the most dropped. We talked on the show how it was a trap. Albert O's on here. Darnell Mooney. Kadarius Toney was on here last week as well. DJ Chark, nice week 1. Not a whole lot happening from a week 2. Matt Ryan looks awful. I understand this drop. Even in super flex leagues, a lot of the quarterbacks we've already touched on, I would roll out Wentz over him. I'd roll out Goff over him. Devontae Parker's on this list. Donovan Peoples-Jones, one of the most added. Now all of a sudden one of the most dropped. Same with Robbie Anderson, right? It's the highs and lows. I don't want to say people are panicking. Maybe this is a little bit of shallow league stuff. Who's on this list that you feel shouldn't be on this list? Is it Darnell Mooney, or are you comfortable moving on from him?
Yeah, Darnell Mooney's a very interesting topic. I feel like it's safe to move on from him depending on, again, your league format. The Bears offense is just bad when it comes to passing the football. I don't know if it's... That's what I mean. Is it just the coaches not trusting Justin Fields? Like, where's it at? Like, they were in that game to an extent against Green Bay, and they just refused to throw the ball. Like, they just didn't. Crazy. And it's like, normally, like, even the Jaguars will step back and chuck it. You know, Houston will chuck it. Like, they're like, we're in the game. Like, let's give it a shot. It just seemed like they were like, we'll just try and grind it out. Maybe we'll get close. Scared. You know, like I'm really torn because the upside's there. We've seen it from Darnell Mooney, but again, like at this point, you're 2-3 weeks in. I get it's like, oh, don't panic, but you know, if you're 0-2 because you started Darnell Mooney 2 weeks in a row, like, yeah, I'm probably looking to move on from him. You know, so I get that. And I mean, for me, Cole Kmet, I get that. Yeah, I'm done with Cole Kmet this year. In any type of redraft, if you're playing Dynasty, hold on to him. But redraft,
breaks my heart.
Redraft, just cut him. I mean, he has done nothing. He's barely been even looked at or glanced at by Justin Fields.
2 targets.
And his like 30 pass attempts in 2 games. So like, no. Cole Kmet's done, I think, for this year. Maybe you see a late season breakout, but it's not like anybody's going to rush to him. You'll be able to re-pick him up. So
yeah, I'm willing to take the loss on Cole Kmet. Nobody was ever reaching for him, but after the top 10, 11, 12 tight ends went off the board, if I didn't get an elite one, then I was in. I was like, yeah, I'll take Cole Kmet here. I mean, he started off slow last year, and he finished the year strong. The Bears didn't do anything. It's very telling now what Chicago wants to do. We knew it was going to be a run-heavy offense with multiple running backs and Justin Fields, and they didn't do anything through the offseason. I mean, Velus Jones felt like a wasted draft pick. They brought in just like Dante Pettis and Economius St. Brown. Like, the pieces that they have on the squad is not fantastic. It was like Mooney and Kmet. That's why I was interested. I look at the matchup this week. It's like, oh, Texans. You can toss on them. You can throw on them. Maybe this is a Mooney week. But Fields has 28 pass attempts, and the Texans are that's going to be a game that's maybe a touchdown game. Like, both teams are kind of in the game. Why should I believe that Fields is going to throw on the Texans? To your point, when they were down double-digit points, 2 scores against the Packers, they didn't even bother. And it felt like their offense rolled a little bit better running the ball, but they didn't even try to throw the football. So, yeah, I agree. I think Mooney on that list, if you're in a 10 team, you drop him. I wouldn't buy low. I definitely wouldn't start him. If you're in a bigger league, you just have to have him on your bench. And maybe this offense does change moving forward. But Jeremy, I just don't see it, man.
And maybe you hit on a later pick. Maybe in your draft you hit on somebody that was a little bit later, that like a Garrett Wilson or something that you can kind of hedge with Mooney, where you can hold him on your bench and stash him. I'm not opposed to that. I just think that at the moment he's definitely unstartable. I mean, I mentioned to some people on Twitter, I'll eat the L, but like, I was going to start him this week against Green Bay. I thought they were going to be down. I'm like, they're going to have to throw, You couldn't take anything away from the first game because it was just a monsoon. Like, so you didn't realize that maybe that's just the Bears offense. Maybe they're just going to run the ball all the time. So like, at this point, I think it's pretty clear. It wasn't, it was a little rainy, but like, the weather was fine in Green Bay, and they still chose to just hand the ball off to David Montgomery. So
Montgomery's the lead guy in this offense, not just
100%.
Carrying the ball, but also receiving catches as well. He's been the guy that's been getting the targets from Fields. We'll take another break here. Jeremy, hang tight. Going to show you a list of the top 10 traded players. Also take some of your start and sit questions, as well as a couple buy low candidates here from Jeremy. So hang tight. Lots more to get to here on Mean Streets. Welcome back in. It's Jeremy and Chris Meaney here with you talking fantasy football. Here's a list of the top 10 traded players over the last 24 hours in CBS leagues. Of course, we just mentioned CeeDee Lamb. I think he's a great buy low. I do believe that. A little hesitant on what he's, I don't feel super confident, even though Dak and him didn't look all that great in week one. It still was the Bucks. I just wonder if he can be actually an elite wide receiver one in this league. I think it remains to be seen if he can handle top coverage, but we'll see. Henderson, Jeff Wilson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zeke, James Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Kyle Pitts, Rashad Bateman, and DK Metcalf. Definitely want to touch on Pitts with you, but there's a lot of Robinson stuff happening here in the chat. Jay's asking, are you buying in on the revival here of Jay Robinson? Deesh is saying he's thinking of trading both Michael Carter and Jay Robinson. Jay Robinson, man, it's unbelievable, right? Coming off the Achilles injury, he looks fantastic. He's definitely the lead in this offense. It's something that Doug Peterson said in the offseason, which would be the case. I don't think anybody really bought it, Jeremy. But, he was basically free in drafts outside the 10th round for sure, 12th, 13th round in some leagues, running back 40, 45. I have a lot of shares of him because he was basically free, and I've been pleasantly surprised with what I've seen from him for a couple weeks. Are you buying?
Yeah, I mean, J-Rob's definitely an interesting case. I was one that was a little bit on the hesitant side. The Achilles injury has not been favorable to running backs, and the only real option that we had coming back recently would have been Marlon Mack, who didn't look overly great last season, and then Cam Akers came back really quick and did not look overly great again, and the question was risen with Cam Akers was it the offensive line with the Rams? Where was he at? And this past week we got to see a little bit of a revival, you could maybe say, from Cam Akers. He looked a little bit better outside of a couple carries that the offensive line was just bad, and it hurts their yards per carry. But to me, Robinson is an outlier to me, man. He looks good. It seems like he might be like a step back from what he was. I don't think he has as much explosiveness. Like, it doesn't necessarily look as he's moving as fast as he was the years prior. But I think that he still looks good. He's solid, and they really like him, obviously. They're giving him the bulk load of the rushing work, which is not a bad thing. He doesn't see really any receiving work because ETN is there, and I think they favor him in that aspect of the game. So Robinson, but he's going to have what everything, and ultimately everything comes down to in fantasy, which is touchdowns. He's going to get that work near the goal line. He does, and he's a little bit bigger of that back, and they like him in that role, and he's going to be kind of vulturing touchdowns, I think, from ETN or even the passing game. So for me, I'm in on him. I'm not looking to spend a ton on him. I don't know if he's going to necessarily be a buy low kind of guy, because I think everybody's kind of realizing that, hey, maybe he's not washed. Maybe this Achilles injury didn't affect him enough that he's not going to be viable anymore. I got him. Someone dropped him in week one in one of my leagues, and I picked him up off the waiver wire for free, obviously, because it was past that, and nobody else put a claim or anything. It was free ad at that point. I added him, and he's sitting on my bench, but 15 points from a running back at this point, and as far as this NFL season's gone, 15 points from a running back is almost a low end RB1. The running backs are not performing by any means as far as that goes. So 15 points out of a flex player is real good, and I don't want to move on from him because I think he's a good value. You got him so late, like you had mentioned, Chris, and why get rid of that value? You're not going to be able to trade. You're not going to trade James Robinson, the one guy had said in there, for a Leonard Fournette style. I don't think you can get. If you can get that deal done, maybe, but sure. You're going to be giving up other things, and how's that really going to look? To me, I'd rather just hold on to James Robinson. Yeah, Leonard Fournette's going to have probably some more boom wakes, but honestly, Robinson could find the end zone and fall in 2 or 3 times, and you got a running back 1 on that week because the Jaguars have a good week, and he's the inside the 5 guy. So
yeah, he's just a couple of years removed from being a top 6, top 7 running back in his first season in the NFL. But of course, there's no ETN that season, right? I agree. ETN is a guy that's still going to get some usage out of the backfield, catching passes. He's hitting his receiving yard prop every single week, and he does look good when he touches the field. But Robinson does seem like that lead, the goal line back there, and that's just it. You got him for free. Why? I think people are just wondering if they should sell him. Right? It's hey, I got this guy for free. Maybe the injury pops up again. He looks good. Should I sell him? Is it going to be more ETN moving forward? And the gap could close, I think. But for where you got him, he's free. Like you said, you roll him out as your flex. I think that's perfectly fine. Dude, we have to take one more break. I'm sorry. have one or two buy low candidates ready to go here for the next block. We only have about 3 or 4 more minutes with Jeremy, but we want to see who he's liking, and we'll get to that question, Julio, as well. Kirk and Eckler for Swift, Jamal, and Mike Williams. Looks like a blockbuster. We'll talk about that, and we'll get a couple buy low targets from Jeremy after the break. Hang tight. One more here on Mean Streets. All right, Jeremy, let's rapid fire through some of these questions so we can get to a buy low candidate. Mr. Curly Wolf in the house. Hey, guys, start 2, bench 2. What he's got here? He's got Carter, Cooper, Olave, James Robinson. Start 2, bench 2.
Oof.
I think you got to play Cooper, no? Just all those targets he had.
Yeah, I don't remember. Who do they have this week? I'm trying to pull
They got Steelers.
Oof.
Steelers tomorrow.
It's a Thursday nighter, isn't it?
Yeah, Thursday night games, I know, on the fence. But I think personally I'd go with Robinson and Cooper there.
Yeah, I probably would too.
Yeah. Would you trade Kirk and Eckler for Swift, Jamal, and Mike Williams? So you'll have the handcuff. You got 2 Detroit. I feel like it's almost a wasted bench spot, even though, Swift hasn't had a full season yet in the NFL. But what side are you on this trade? Kirk, Eckler, or Swift, Jamal, Mike Williams?
I almost feel like I'd just stay with Kirk and
I like
Eckler.
it.
I like Swift's upside. I love DeAndre Swift by any means. I just feel like Mike Williams is very a volatile guy, and I think that he has good weeks, but it's like we saw it last year. He was very good in the beginning of half, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. He has a big week without Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen comes back soon. I mean, he's not going to be gone for all year, so it's like where Kirk is the guy, and Eckler, he's going to get his usage. He's not getting as much usage as he did in the past, but he's still putting up points. I mean, he was still a top 5 running back this week with 80
He just doesn't have any
points.
touchdowns. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. He's second in among backs and targets. He's fine. He's getting a lot of opportunities still, just no touchdowns. All right, buy low, sell high. I got a couple names here. I just think these guys are candidates, could be had. Tyler, let's roll through it quickly, and we'll wrap up with a buy low for Jeremy. Cook, of course, it's fresh. Kamara hasn't played in a couple weeks. I'm a little bit worried about Kamara, but I think, he certainly can be had. If your running backs are okay, if you can get this guy as your third back on the cheap, I mean, why not? CeeDee Lamb's on here, DJ Moore, Juju, Kyle Pitts. Oh my goodness, I don't even know. But Kyle Pitts certainly can be had. I wouldn't sell him, but he can be had. And then a couple sell high candidates here as well. Gibson, potentially with Robinson coming back, Cordell Patterson, Darrell Henderson. I do believe Akers will overtake him over time. Lockett come off the big week. Why not sell him? I don't believe in Duvernay or Corey Davis, but give me a guy that you're looking to get this week.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be kind of like not the flashiest, but like for me, David Montgomery's always been a guy that I really like. And I think right now that so many people are out on him just because of the offseason narratives of like, hey, Khalil Herbert's coming for his job. He doesn't fit the running scheme that they're bringing in. This, that, everything's against him, but clearly through the first 2 weeks, the Bears want to get the ball in his hands. I mean, he's seen 50% of the rushing attempts. He's seen 53% of the team's rushing yards. He's seen 21% of the team's targets. He's seen, with that, it's 33% of their receptions and 90% of their yards. And he only has 38, but, the passing game's not so great. But he's producing. He has 40% of the team's scrimmage yards, basically. That's David Montgomery right now. And he's the RB 22 with 23 fantasy points. That hasn't been the greatest start to the season for running backs. But, I don't think Herbert's taking his job. He's looked good on Sunday Night Football. And I think that Herbert's a nice accessory piece. He's a little bit more explosive in a small sample size. But I think that Montgomery is a very good running back. I think he gets a lot of knock because he's not supposedly super efficient, but he gets the job done. They like him, and obviously the Bears don't trust Justin Fields like we had mentioned earlier by the looks of it. So I feel like it's going to be a lot of running, and there's going to be that volume that we've always gotten from David Montgomery, and I feel like he's probably pretty cheap. So for me, it's more of a roster securing move. I don't think that David Montgomery's going to come in and win you a week here or there, but he's going to give you that consistent 15, 16 points. If he falls in the end zone, which he hasn't yet this year, you might get a 20-point week, and he might be a low-end RB1. He might get you up into that upper area, but I think that for the cost and what you're going to get with how many few workhorses are actually available and affordable at the NFL level, I think David Montgomery's a good target, and I just think you're not going to give up a lot for him, and you're going to get a decent return.
And look at the back of the football card from last year. A lot of catches from him. It's not just through the first 2 weeks. Last year with Fields, a lot of targets and a lot of catches as well. Jeremy, fantastic stuff, dude. I wish we had more time. Let's do this again soon. Check out Jeremy on the Twitter machine, PopesFFH, and look for doing some video content for us over at FTN Network on our YouTube page. We'll say goodbye to you for now, Jeremy. Good luck this week. Check out all his rankings, FTNFantasy.com. We got an MLB pick for you to wrap up Mean Streets. We'll be back in a couple. Welcome back in. One MLB prop here for you. It's Robbie Ray over 6.5 strikeouts, a matchup against the Oakland Athletics. You look at Robbie Ray's splits. This matchup is on the road. He's got an ERA at home of 2.73 and an ERA on the road at 5.08. This game is in Oakland, as I mentioned, but a spacious ballpark and not a great offensive team. They're in the bottom three in every single category that I care about over the last month of the season. They check in with the 12th highest strikeout rate against lefties, and over the last 30 days, they have a 14.2 swinging strike percentage, which is the highest mark in baseball. So over Robbie Ray, over at DraftKings, minus 120, 6.5 strikeouts. If you're looking for more, ftnbets.com, our bet tracker. Meaney's the promo code, and we'll have MLB picks and props around the diamond coming your way on Game Plus Network at 6 Eastern. Until then, we will talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.